So the first thing is when I was in college, I would go out and I would work the Maryland basketball camps. And that literally came off just an idea kind of that I had. And I was cold emailing some of the big storied programs, Maryland, Duke, Carolina. As growing up in California where we did like ACC basketball at that time was so big. And I remember Maryland, their assistant coach. I actually said I would come work for free. I just wanted to get experience. Maryland assistant coach said, "Hey, I got you down. You can come work camp." I did that for a couple years every summer. One summer I took with Jesse Pruitt, who's played with us in college and now is a coach. So I took him with me one summer out to Maryland. But I wasn't sure when I was in college, especially at the end, that I wanted to coach. One of the reasons is I think the financial piece, being getting an economics degree from Davis and seeing our coaches who didn't make a lot of money and were kind of, financially they were fine, but they weren't making it, they weren't killing it. Right. And I think all of us growing, like all of our friend group, man, we had big dreams. We were going to, buy big houses and drive big cars and kill it. And so I think, and the entrepreneurial part of me, wasn't really sure that I wanted to coach because of my experience seeing those coaches. But when so I got that job it was actually Accenture, not Deloitte, but when I got that job offer at Accenture, I was planning to do it. I was going to do it unless something came about that was kind of magical. I was going to do it. And in the off season, Maryland's GA job came open. I remember driving. You were part of these weekends. I remember it was like Memorial Day, so it was around this time. I was driving to houseboats with a couple of the guys, and I found out that their GA job came open, and I called and I said, "Hey, I'd love to have the job." And I was planning to go work their summer camp anyways that summer before I started in August. And I think in the back of my mind, I was doing this just because what if something crazy happens or like I could ever get a job in coaching, or I wanted to keep those connections just because of like, you never know what could happen. And, lo and behold, they had that job open. I went out there, I interviewed for the GA job. They offered me the job. I told Accenture I was not going to go, and my whole career went a different path. And at that time, honestly, if I didn't get that Maryland job, I wasn't going to coach. But one of the things I sold them on, I think when I was interviewed with them and I had been out there a lot, was I was like, I don't think they realized how big of an opportunity this was for me. I mean, this was only a grad assistant for them, but for me and even our friend group, right, Phil, and our family, and this was like the biggest thing in the world. How did a kid from California played at UC Davis, small Division I at the time, like get an opportunity to go be in a GA at Maryland? Like Maryland, to us at that time was bigger than life, right? And I told them that, and I did a good job, I think, of selling that because it was. And then, and right from there, it just kind of changed the whole trajectory of not only my career, but my life, to be honest.
Was there an adjustment for you when you moved out to the East Coast at all? Or were you just so immersed in the program that it wasn't much of a time to absorb it?
I mean, I got an MBA. I did an MBA at the University of Maryland, University College, which was predominantly at the time, it was mostly online then. And I rented a room in, honestly, not a nice place of like right off campus. Like it wasn't a nice area. I literally rented like a $250 a month room in like a 3-bedroom tiny house that was 1.5 miles from campus. And I literally like lived in the office. And for 2 or 3 years, it was just so much. There wasn't really a whole lot of experiencing, I take that back. Like DC, Lindsay's, my brother-in-law was there. So I did a little bit of, but just a little bit of searching around and exploring, but it was more like being with the team and being with Gary and helping him with a bunch of things. And obviously just getting to see all the things that Maryland basketball was and is. And it was bunkered down for a couple of years though, of just incredibly hard work.
I mean, you went to Maryland at a time when the program in particular was, obviously in the ACC, and it was, very well known and respected and super successful. And during your time there, you guys won an ACC championship in 2010, and multiple NCAA appearances, lots and lots of winning. You start to make your impact in, the coaching world as one of the youngest and fastest rising coaches in, all of college basketball. And I think at the time you were the youngest. When you moved up from the GA and on, you ended up becoming the youngest assistant in the ACC. During that period where we're talking about your ability to connect, you obviously made a name as a recruiter, and you using that natural ability, you brought in guys like Gravis Vasquez, Alex Lynn, and guys that went on to have NBA careers, and I'm sure couldn't say enough about you. But in doing all that and having that success and establishing, part of that comes with your natural ability, but also the confidence and the belief that Coach Williams instilled in you, and by giving you the job and then continuing to promote you. What did you kind of take, and what impact did he have on you in your career, with your time, working under coach, learning from him, getting his support and tutelage, kind of coming from his tree, and anything about working with Coach Williams that like funny stories and things that you remember that really stick out?
Yeah, I mean, there was funny stories is like I'd have to think, but you could go on for days. I mean, Coach, listen, I think at the end of the day, I tell this to people, I got a PhD in running and coaching at a high level of college basketball and running a high level basketball team. And Maryland basketball at that time, I mean, it's not just coaching about. I mean, it's like a Fortune 500 company, especially, administratively and and all the stuff that Coach had to do. And I was so close to him in the early years, helping him almost as a personal secretary. So I got to just get a PhD and immerse myself in everything that comes with running a college basketball program. And from where I started as a GA to where I finished with him in 6 years as like an assistant coach, I was able, this was a blessing in my career, to start at the bottom of the organization, if you will, the staff, and get experience in everything on the way up. We also had some great assistant coaches who I think I learned so much from during that time. And Coach Williams is single-handedly the person most responsible for my success professionally, because he took a chance on me, at 25 years old, and really made my career and jump-started my career by making me an assistant coach at Maryland at that age. He trusted me. I think he had told a few people, and he had kind of said to me at times that my ability, at that level, you're dealing with, like any business, you're just dealing with a lot of problems on a daily basis, or you're solving problems on a daily basis, whether it's basketball on the court, whether it's off the court, whether there's so much to do. And I do remember him saying that, I had immersed myself in all these things, and meaning that anytime there was some kind of problem came up, he was observing that Rob was involved in helping solve it. And I think being a problem solver, being, a worker at that time, and then earning his trust were two things, were things that he, really valued in me. And I think the lesson too for me is I've always thought he gave me an opportunity at a young age when he could have hired somebody with a lot more experience because he trusted me. And I do think you see it all the time. Coaches are sometimes hesitant to promote from within, especially younger coaches who have less experience. And a lot of times when they do promote from within on someone they trust, on someone who's shown loyalty and work ethic, it almost always turns out to be a positive. It's just, I think, mentally sometimes for people getting over the hump of hiring somebody that's younger or with less experience.